All right, I'm going to show my flag icon. Hey, good evening, everybody. This is George Lutz, founder of Honor and Remember. Now, it's been about a month since I came on live, and I just thought it was probably a good idea to, come on and update everybody. Sometimes it's difficult to, I don't know, just sit down and talk, right? Sit down and talk. And, it seems like that fan may be bothering people. I'm going to turn this off. This is a live broadcast, right? Even though it's going to be hot for me. Just sit down and, just talk extemporaneously and, share what's going on, where my heart is, where my struggles are, my challenges, and, all of, what we go through individually and as an organization. And so there's a lot of amazing things that are happening. I don't remember the last date that I gathered with you. I think it's been about a month ago. So, it would have been end of June sometime. And we've been working on a lot of different avenues. Sometimes I hate to even share all of what we're going through because, we've got people out there. I say people, a couple of people out there that are actually trying to undermine and kill this effort to remember Gold Star families. I'm flabbergasted, every time I hear about it. And I wish in some cases that people would just be quiet. If they're not out actively making a difference and helping in their own way with their own ideas, right, they should just sit on the sidelines and armchair quarterback. And so it's very difficult sometimes to share, intimately with you guys and know that, somebody's going to take what I say and try to do something negative with it. And it's happening, believe me. I've had individuals who have called our sponsors, who have called companies that are flying the flag. Not that I'm giving anybody ideas, but go for it if that's what you think your mission in life is. And just told lies and tried to get this flag down. They're trying to say that families don't want this. I mean, I'm not going to go into the negativity, but I would just ask those of you that are supporting, that are believing that what I've been doing for the last 18 years is pure of heart and has nothing to do with me individually, but a mission that I believe I've been put on to make sure that families are not forgotten. Their heroes are perpetually remembered. I mean, this is the whole reason why this mission started, to give this gift, and that's what solely I've been working on. We've even made some changes recently in the organization, made some cutbacks. I mean, there's some things that we are doing to try to make sure that we can continue sharing this message, and families continue to get the flags that they're requesting, and we're getting flags up on flagpoles. There's so much behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, to what we're doing. And I've spent a lot of time to make sure that this flag is seen. This has been the gift that I hope to give from the very beginning. This gift is not a gift unless it's seen, right? It's a visible expression of appreciation. And if you really believe you're for Gold Star families, if you really believe that it's important that we never forget, then this flag becomes that meaningful tribute that enables you to send that message. And I think it speaks for itself, the purity of what is happening, right? The flag is now adopted in 29 states, 29 officially. We're on the verge of 30, and there's several more in the works. And national adoption. I've been talking about national adoption for since the beginning, because that really was my goal. I saw the POW flag as an inspiration. I saw it as a roadmap, if you will, to be able to bring a KIA flag, if you will. It's while serving or as a result of serving, but I use KIA just as a reference to MIA. If we have an MIA flag, we should have a KIA flag. If we are going to remember those who are still missing, who remains need to be recovered and brought home, who need to be accounted for, then we also need to remember those thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of lives that were given, for each of us to remain free. It just completely makes sense. And so my mission has always been national adoption. That hasn't been a surprise. And I think if you look at the book, Tragedy to Tribute, that, I wrote, and you look in the back of the book, I've got dozens of endorsement letters from organizations that wrote me letters when I first began, back in 2008, 2009, early on. And so the validation has been there ever since the beginning. So something interesting happened is that an organization, I'm not going to name anybody by name because I'm not interested in a fight, honestly. But an organization came out and said, well, we don't like the flag. We don't like the way it looks, and we don't think we need it anyway because the American flag was enough. All the same reasons, which is interesting if you analyze them, all the same reasons why we shouldn't have a POW flag was the reasons against the Honor and Remember flag, right? So, I just had to shake my head and go, oh, that's interesting, because you're building a case for the very flag that you can't, you can't release from, that you embrace. And so, traditions take time, right? But I've never wavered from the beginning of wanting to create a national symbol so that it becomes a gift to all those families who are wishing, hoping, praying that somebody cares, that they haven't forgotten. The Honor and Remember flag becomes that symbol of remembrance that everybody can fly, not the families. I mean, they can fly it, but it's flown as an indication, as a message delivery system to the families to say, we haven't forgotten. I don't see anything wrong with that. And so here we are 18 years later, and to have an organization come up and say, well, this is an organization I have a letter of support from, by the way, which was even more ironic. But to have them say, well, we don't want the flag, and it's getting close to becoming a national symbol, so we're going to speak up. Well, it's always been my goal, so that's where I'm headed. I've always been transparent about that, so there's nothing to hide. And then to come to find out it was just one person, maybe two, within that organization, or just, I don't know, they were jealous. It wasn't their idea. They think that Gold Star families have enough recognition. I happen to think that nothing will ever be enough. I don't care what you do for the Gold Star families, it will never be enough. And so what's wrong with a national symbol that actually calls out remembrance specifically, right? Not the American flag, which, has a broad meaning and representation, but a specific, meaningful, iconic, symbolic flag that when you fly it sends a message of appreciation for that sacrifice. I've said this before. 250 years of freedom does not come without 250 years of sacrifice. And so, for someone to come out and be negative about it now, as if all of a sudden I brought this out last week, like I hadn't been thinking about this, for the last 2 decades, is a little bit interesting. You can see that, that it's negativity that was particularly directed. And there was a hit piece done out there. You may find it, out in the news, and it just, it was just horrible. It really kind of gut punched me, for a minute. And then I realized that, truth will out, that the people who are out there being negative are going to be revealed, and that more people are out there realizing that this is important than ever before. And this is becoming, whether or not it gets federal adopted, this is becoming a nationally recognized symbol of remembrance. We've done our due diligence. We have laid out the groundwork. We have meticulously, walked this path, one day at a time, and so, onward we continue. And the more opportunity I have to speak, more places, I'm able to go. The book certainly tells the story. So no matter what happens on my end, the book continues to tell the story of what we're trying to achieve and what people should be doing. We have our state chapters out there, and they're out there interacting with families and presenting flags and continuing that mission, on a continuous basis. And I'm not even talking about the honor and sacrifice portion of our organization, which honors fallen first responders. I mean, it's another huge movement in and of itself. But just the honor and remember flag and the importance of recognizing that sacrifice needs to be recognized. We've just had 3 casualties in the last week. This Iran situation is escalating. And so what do we do as a nation? I mean, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to react. I mean, we have our leadership. They go to Dover. They meet with the families. I mean, that's great. That's a one-off opportunity. But as a nation, we're not following them to their hometowns. We're not there at their memorial service. We might not know the family, but we can embrace a symbol and then project that symbol, display that symbol, in a meaningful way that lets everybody know that we still care. I mean, this has always been kind of my vision, that when we do have a casualty, whether it's in a state or, I mean, they're all state related, right? They're all federal as an umbrella, but then they're all, subset into a state, that honor and remember flags would go up on flagpoles everywhere so that everybody knew that there was a military casualty. I mean, that would point and indicate our appreciation and our thankfulness for that casualty, for that individual, that named person who has loved ones and friends. And so this is really the beauty of what this flag can mean and can communicate, in a very positive and memorable way, right? This is not a flag of sorrow and of negativity, but it's a flag of celebration. And so over the course of the last, kind of months, some of these things, have happened. We've made some major milestones in federal legislation. I'm not going to jinx anything, but we are making incredible progress. And I believe that this flag could become the next national symbol, the national symbol of remembrance. And we're working on that, behind the scenes. Some of our folks are working on it in front of the scenes, but we are very diligently working on it. And I believe that 250th anniversary of our country is the best time to bring this national flag, a flag like this that has never been brought forth before. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen. It may not happen. Like I said, I don't want to jinx it, but I believe firmly that we are in a place that we've never been before, and we have gotten the support that we've never had before, and we are getting the backing of sound-minded individuals who realize that recognizing sacrifice, recognizing the Gold Star families, those who say to me, oh, I'm all for the Gold Star families, like this one organization did, but on the other hand, they're trying to shut down the very thing that would remember all Gold Star families. Does that seem like it makes sense to you? No, well, it didn't make sense to me either. And so be aware of that that's happening out there. We have been asked and answered every possible question, out there. The last one was, oh, we're making tons of money, on flags. This is just a money-making opportunity. Well, there's nobody making money off of flags. I will tell you that. Everything goes into the organization to help perpetuate what it is we're trying to do, right? To bring about this national remembrance. You try starting an organization and see if you can do it without funding. So yeah, there's funding to help work out what we're trying to do. We have people that are not full-time volunteers, but that's all part of running a business. The other thing was copyright. People want to say, well, you copyright the flag. Yeah, I did, because I learned from the mistake of the POW/MIA families, is that by not protecting it, it ended up being made all over the world, including China and Vietnam, and there was no revenue benefit to them at all. So you would think that every flag that's sold, POW/MIA flag that's sold, somehow benefits the movement of bringing back POW and MIAs. And I will tell you, and you can, challenge me if you want to, there's no revenue going back to any family or organization on the manufacture and sale of the POW/MIA flag. Zero. Okay? Zero. So you think there's this altruistic, oh, we're going to put the flag on every building. Well, it's not helping the organization. And in some ways, there is a give back. I don't know what that is, but it's very little. And so, anyway, yes, trademarked the honor and remember flag because I wanted two things. I wanted to protect it, and I wanted us to have some little revenue source that would enable us to continue what we're doing. We have presented thousands of flags to families, right? At the cost of right now probably over $3 million to get us to this point. Yet, we don't have any money in the bank to drive to the grocery store. I mean, this is the kind of thing. Everything is turned and flipped. We even have an endowment program that I never talk about that we have been putting into to collect money so that we could fulfill the flag requests, as they came down the road in perpetuity. We were looking long range, right? Not a lot of money in that endowment program, but it still exists so that we're forward thinking. And so these are the kinds of things that maybe people don't understand that we're trying to do, that we've been doing, that I've been doing my best to try to achieve, to keep things going. But all in all, it was said to me that we're 1,000 miles wide and an inch deep because we are trying to get to as many families, to as many organizations, to as many individuals as we can in order to get this flag up on flagpoles, flying and given as a gift of visibility to everyone who sees it, not just the moms and dads and the spouses and the children, but the aunts and the uncles and the grandparents and the second cousins and all those and friends who are grieving the loss of that same individual, who are never labeled as a gold star, who never get any kind of benefits, but still need to know that that loved one hasn't been forgotten, that their sacrifice hasn't been forgotten. I don't know why this is so hard for some people. So we've made some major milestones that are, will be revealed as we come forward. I've got a major restaurant chain that's going to put the honor and remember flag on every store. You're going to see that soon. I'm not going to talk about who that is, but you will see that. And some of you may have already heard about that. I was down at the American Gold Star Mother Convention in Tampa, Florida, just within the last time of my broadcast. And I was able to present two personalized flags to two very special moms. While I was there, I got to meet another special mom, again, who I've met many times over the years, Georgie Krell, who lost her son in Vietnam. He's a Medal of Honor recipient, has a wing named after him in Miami, Florida, of a hospital. And she was there, 95 years old, I believe. She was the first American Gold Star mother that I ever presented a flag to 18 years ago. 18 years ago. at the headquarters of the American Gold Star Mothers. It was an honor that I will never forget. And here she was 18 years later at the convention, and I was able to give a hug to her and, love on her. And there she was 95 years later, still supporting the mission and praying that this becomes nationally adopted and this mission, comes to, this huge next step. And so that was just an amazing opportunity for me. Then these are the kinds of things that are happening. While I was there, I met the president of the Blue Star Mothers. The Blue Stars, everyone should know, are those that are in active duty, those moms who have kids in active duty. And so I was asked to speak at the National Convention of the Blue Star Mothers. I mean, these aren't mothers who had lost their loved ones, but these are mothers who know very intimately that they could lose their loved ones. They were there supporting the Gold Star Mothers, and this is a connection. I've been supported by them since the very beginning. I met their founder, Marie Spears, years ago, and I presented her flag, honestly. And so this is the kind of thing that just keeps going. I spoke to the Knights of Columbus. The Knights of Columbus is a national men's organization, civic-minded, patriotic-minded. And it looks like that the Knights of Columbus are going to start adding the Honor and Remember flag to their assemblance of flags, and adding to their tradition. I mean, this is the right thing to do. All of this, I always say truth will out, right? That the right will eventually surface. And it's the right thing to do at the right time. And I think that we're in a place that we've never been before. And it's because of all of you. It's not because of me. I mean, I can get out there at, yeah, not going to tell my age. I'm not going to get out there myself. I just can't. I get out there as often as I can. But there's only so much I can do. So much bandwidth I have, only so much energy I have. I'm an introvert, that. I hate, to be putting myself out in a way, that puts me in people. No excuses. But recently I spoke at the Department of Public Accounting Agency, DPAA. They're the organization, the government organization that actually finds the remains, identifies them, and does a notification, and brings the accounts for the unaccounted for. And I've been asked 3 times to speak at their national convention. So I've spoken to the Vietnam era MIA families, and I've sat in on cases, and I've spoken to the Korean MIA families. And I can say that the mission has, the flag has been overwhelmingly embraced, just overwhelmingly embraced. And so I'm doing all the due diligence I can. I'm putting myself out there in a way that brings explanation to what the importance of this is, and where it's going, and why it exists, right? And so the symbolism of the flag. I mean, we've been compared to other flags that in other parts of the country. Hey, people don't fly those flags. People haven't been associated with those flags. Colors are colors. Look at the symbolism of the Honor and Remember flag. Look how much symbolism is in that flag. And I don't think you can compare it to any other flag on earth. It has a very, very specific intent. And so this is the power of having the right mission, of being on the right path, of not giving up, of being persistent. And this is all of what I can only keep going. I don't know. You got me tongue-tied now. I just want to read back. I read this before. And I really haven't read out of the book. But I just want to read this to you, and only because those of you out here who don't believe my sincerity, don't don't walk in my shoes, don't live in my house, don't understand, what I have to go through emotionally every day, this roller coaster that I ride, to try and make sure that when I'm gone, that this is left as a legacy for every family who's ever sacrificed, past, happening now, or will ever in the future, because they will, that this is left as that permanent legacy. And this is my hope for all of you, that you would get behind this and help me push this over the finish line. And what is the finish line? Hey, national adoption is not going to be the end of it. National adoption doesn't necessarily mean it's required to fly. It may just be permitted to fly. So then we'll need to get it required if that's what we should do. And then we've got more states, right? 20 more states, 21 more states, because I think we might get 30. And then every city, town, and community. The flag needs to be flying everywhere. Churches, homes, businesses, communities, airports, you name it. Everywhere there's a flagpole, golf courses. We have a beautiful golf pin flag. But I just want to read this one thing. I've read it before, but I'm going to read it again because I'm not giving up. It's one paragraph that Dennis Miller wrote back when I wrote the book last year. I quote from Dennis Miller in the foreword of Tragedy to Tribute. His eternal cause, meaning mine, is the honor and remember flag. It's a dual track. One, presenting a flag to other Gold Star parents, and families of every variety, to help buttress them in their agonizing loss. And two, continually seeking official recognition of the flag by the oft-times apathetic powers that be in our nation's capital. And it's not just our nation's capital. There's apathy in a lot of places. I give fair warning to all slumbering bureaucrats. George Lutz will not stop, in quotes. Well, it's actually in italics. Like water constantly pressing on a surface, finding a tiny imperfection in the surface, bearing on it until it becomes a fissure, seeping into the fissure, subtly eroding it, broadening it, cracking it, and eventually torrenting through, he will not stop. Okay, so that's very kind of him to write that. But I think you can see it. I think you can see it in my demeanor. I think you can see it in my actions. I think you can see it in the continuation of the mission. And more will happen. You will see. And this piece of this mission will be accomplished. All right. God bless you guys for watching. honorandremember.org. Do I have an end slide? I always say this, that, individually we can do what we can to remember a few, but together we remember them all. Thank you, and have a great night.